since the school year started, I never had issue with internet, but all of a sudden I have all full bars, and I got unstable internet because it's outside interference. All right. You could let people in. Good morning, Jazzy. Good morning, Angela. We will start in 4 minutes. Good morning, Anthony. Good morning, Jeanette, Joanne. Good morning, Jimmy. Can y'all hear me?
Yes. I hear you.
Okay. So we're gonna ask, your name is, your district is before your name.
Okay.
But I'm changing it as we have 2 minutes before we start. Good morning, everyone. I am going to put the attendance link in the chat. I went to the reading room. Okay, I think we have quorum. Okay, good morning, everyone. We're gonna ask everyone to rename themselves with their district in front of their names. It is Women's History Month, and it's March 9th, our general membership meeting. We have our board members. We celebrated Valentine's Day, President's Day, Martin Luther King's Day, Black History Month, and we go into one of my favorites, Women's History Month. On the screen, you will see the meeting procedures and standing rules. Everyone should have the actual document along with the bylaws. Take a minute to review. The key point is summary. Please wait till you're recognized. Please raise your hands. If you're unable to use the hand function, please put it in the chat. One of the board members will bring it to my attention if I don't see it. Be courteous and respectful. Remember, 2 minutes or less. If you already asked a question, you already spoke, we will go to someone who hasn't spoken first before coming back to you. If you have a follow-up, please raise your hands again for the follow-up. So we are going to do roll call. And again, reminder, please put your district and rename yourself and put your district in front of your name. If you're unable to, just put it in the chat. Randy or Jazzy or Jimmy will rename your district for you. Please rename yourself to your name as well, so we can identify who's on the platform. So we're gonna go backwards today. So we're gonna start with Staten Island.
Hi, here, District 31.
Well, when I mean 31, thank you. When I mean Staten Island, I'm talking about high schools.
Sorry, thank you.
Staten Island high schools. Queens High Schools is here, that's myself. Manhattan High Schools.
Good morning, present.
Good morning, Rosa. Brooklyn High Schools. Brooklyn. Bronx High School. Bronx.
Just now entering.
All right, thank you. District 75.
Present, good morning.
Good morning. District 32. I think I saw Jazzy, that's correct? District 32?
She's here.
Thank you. District 31, I know you're here, thank you. District 30 says she'll be running late. District 29.
Present, Joanne
Thank
Cummings.
Yep. Good morning, District 28. I saw Adriana.
Good morning, Shirley. Thank you.
Good morning. District 27. District 27. Okay, we'll come back. And again, the attendance sheet is being put in the form. Please fill it out. 26 says she'll be running 8, but I'll call her name out. District 26. Okay, District 25. I saw Francis.
Here, good morning.
Good morning. District 24. District 24. District 23. District 22.
Good morning, everyone. Present.
Good morning. District 21.
Good
Oh,
morning.
Randy's here. All right, District 20.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Tamara. District 19. District 19. All right, District 18. District 18. Okay. I acknowledge Staten Island High Schools is here. She put it in the chat. District 17. District 17. District 16. District 15, I see you. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning.
District 14. District 14. District 13, I saw Miss Green. I thought I saw her.
She's
Present.
here.
Thank you. District 12.
Good morning here.
Good morning. District 11.
Good morning.
Good morning. District 10. District 10. District 9. District 9. Okay. District 8.
Good morning,
I saw
everyone.
it. Good morning, Angela. District 7. District 7. District 6. District 6. District 5. District 5. District 4. District 3.
Good
I saw
morning.
you, Jimmy. Good morning, Jimmy. District 2. District number 2. All right. And District 1. All right, good morning, everyone, again. So run through our agenda. We just did roll call. We're gonna talk business and updates. We're gonna have face updates, asylum seekers. We will have Corinne Christensen. She's from the Office of Community Schools. Put us, no, that's backwards. No, that's right. For our community schools, and then for asylum seekers, No, for early childhood, it's going to be Jordina Clanton. She's the Senior Director of Strategy for Strategy and Policy for Early Childhood. Then we're going to have New York City Opt-Out come in to speak about the state exams. And we're going to have New York City Chancellor David Banks. And then we're going to have Senator Robert Jackson to follow up. Maria, District 10, you have your hands up. You're present.
Good morning, Shirley. Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to make sure that it was noted that I was here.
Yes, good morning. I see
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for letting us know. And Becca, I saw you as well. So we're going to go right into it. We have quite a few things to do. So we're going to review the February minutes that were sent ahead. Please take time to review it real quick. And then when you're ready, if you have any concerns or questions, please let us know, raise your hands. And if you're ready to make a motion to adopt, please do so as well as we go through the document, after we go through the document. Adriana, you have your hands up?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make a motion to adopt the minutes.
All right, thank you. I mean, really quick, do we have someone to second that? Becca? Becca, you second? Do you have your hands up?
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, Becca has the floor. Okay, Andrea, you can take the floor because Becca put her hands down. Andrea? Let's do this one more time. Who would like to second?
B25.
Francis, thank you. Anyone opposes us adopting our February 9th meeting or would like to abstain? Please do so at this time. Okay, so our minutes are adopted. So our first resolution is the opposition of raising the charter cap in the favor of limiting the charter cost to the DOE budget and ensuring more oversight and accountability. This was sent ahead of time. Again, let's take a minute to review. If you have any questions, please raise your hands. And when someone is ready to make the motion to adopt, please do so. And Rashida, I acknowledge you are present, District 4. I'm just gonna remind members. Okay, District 13, you have your hands up.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Okay, thank you, Celia. And I see Manhattan High Schools, you have your hands up.
Yes, I would like to second it.
Thank you, Rosa. Anyone at this time, for the record, opposes us adopting this resolution or would like to abstain for the records, please do so at this time. Okay, so that resolution is adopted. Thank you. Bronx High Schools, I acknowledge you, Rima. Thank you. So our next one, this is a very short resolution, but it's to make sure the resolution is calling for that every New York City high school, this is from the high school committee, has a summer bridge program. The other resolution was from the legislative committee. So again, at this time, if you have questions regarding the resolution, please raise your hand, or when you're ready, so do so, make a motion to adopt the resolution.
A motion to adopt the minute, resolution. for the
Thank you,
summer program.
thank you, District 3.
District 15 seconds.
Thank you, District 15. Thank you, Nancy. All right, for the record, anyone wishes to oppose from adopting this resolution, the Summer Bridge program for every New York City high school? Or someone would like to abstain for the record? Please do so at this time. Okay, thank you so much. So Summer Bridge program also has been adopted. Thank you so much. Our final resolution, this is an update to the other resolution that we passed. This time is to request that it is a full commitment to fully fund enhanced cafeteria. This for all high schools and middle schools. So last time the budget was set for 50 million, and it was only a set of number of schools can, but if they commit to fully funding enhanced cafeterias for all high schools and middle schools that has not undergone that, we'll know that all high schools and middle schools will have that enhanced cafeteria design. And we know this helps with the mental health and social and emotional wellness of our students, and not only speeding up the service line and all the other factors that goes into in this enhanced cafeteria. Those, if you have seen the enhanced cafeterias, seen pictures of it, it's amazing. And that deli style, the students really love it, and it feels like a community in the booths. So this was sent ahead of time as well. So you have any questions regarding it, please raise your hands. And when you're ready to adopt, and I see Miss Celia Green, District 13, you have your hands up.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a motion to adopt.
Thank you so much. And
I
Miss
second the motion
Daniels.
on high schools.
Okay, Miss Daniels has the floor.
I second that motion.
Okay, thank you, District 75. Again, anyone who opposes us adopting this resolution, well, some of them are resolutions, some are position letters, but you understand what we're doing here. Anyone who adopt, because this is a letter not written in a resolution style, please say so at this time, or wish to abstain for the record, please do at this time. Okay, so our resolution has passed. Thank you, everybody. One of the announcements we have Monday, this upcoming Monday, March 13th, the UFT is having lobby day, and each borough has a bus leaving for Albany. Please contact your UFT liaison, parent and community liaison for your borough for more information to sign up. And the more the merrier. You don't specifically have to lobby for, oh shoot, that says mob day instead of Monday. So lobby for UFT purposes, but you can meet your senators and assembly persons and lobby for things that you think, for educational purposes, that you think that needs to occur for the well-being of our children's education. So we encourage all those who can, please go to Albany. So it's March Madness, right? Not only for basketball, but it's for parent leaders, especially president's councils and PAPTAs. We have the candidate forums. We have spring elections coming up. We should be forming our nomination committees and preparing for elections. Some of us already had candidate forums already. And also the New York City school survey deadline to fill it out is coming up soon. So please, if you have not fill it out and encourage your constituencies, your schools to have the parents and families fill out that school survey. And it's also for teachers and students to fill out. So have your child fill it out as well. Any questions regarding that?
Can I raise my hand?
I can't see, I'm sharing my screen, so who is speaking?
Sorry, this is Nancy. I'm trying to find the raise hand icon. I wanted to ask a question about what you said before about lobby day. If that's
Oh,
okay.
sure, go ahead, you have the floor.
Where can I find more information about that? I'm unfamiliar with it and I'm curious.
Okay, so you're Brooklyn. So your
Yes, District
Brooklyn
15.
liaison is Tessa Wilson, and her email address is on the screen. I'm gonna ask Randy, can you put it in the chat for me?
Thank you so much.
twilson@uft.org. So, and I would suggest that you put, add yourself to the mailing list for that liaison, for the UFT as well. So you'll get all these information, and Randy put it in the chat for your convenience.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So it's that time of year. I mentioned it briefly already. It's nominating committees should be forming or have formed. There's some of us whose schools have elections in April. So you have any questions or concerns about forming nominating committee or elections, spring elections, you can ask so at this time. And Randy is going to take lead on that. If you have any questions or concerns, and if you don't want to do it, and here goes Adriana. Adriana, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you. I've had a couple of our PA leaders ask about whether or not it is possible to do an expedited vote on the bylaws, because they have to this point not been able to, for whatever reason, get new bylaws signed for the current year. And some of them are so out of date, like pre-COVID out of date. We don't have, I don't think for a lot of them, they have the time to do the 3 sessions before they have to start nominating for next year. So should they wait and just do their bylaws freshly in September, October, or do they have the option to expedite that process?
Okay, so I know I told Randy to take the lead, but okay, so the 3-step process, if you're doing a review of the bylaws, which is required by the Chancellor's regulations. Every 3 years, you must review your bylaws. You don't have to amend them, but that process, that's why it's a 3-step for that one, because you have to ask for, the first meeting is asking for people to join the bylaws committee. So my second question to you is, why are you need to amend the bylaws? Are you amending it to be in compliance to the regs, or you just want to change something on the request of the bylaw? So if it's regarding to update to the regs and it hasn't been updated, that is a 1 meeting process.
So that,
But
yeah,
if it's-
that's my understanding, is that they are out of compliance and they need to update them to be in compliance, not necessarily because they want to make changes.
Okay, so that is a 1 meeting process, but you have to let them know on the notification that we are updating the bylaws because we're out of compliance to the Chancellor's regulations that was changed in November 18th of 2021. So yes, so that could be a 1 meeting, but you must give notification, because even though you have to change it, you have to also review those changes with your membership and to update the bylaws. So that's a 1 meeting. You don't have to do 3 meetings. It's not a 3 meeting process.
Okay, and that's just the 10-day in advance notification?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Andy, you would like to add to that?
I think you covered everything. As long as they put it on their agenda and say that it's for compliance, then that would be one meeting. But if they're changing other parts of it, then I would wait until September and have the new board form the bylaws committee and go through the motions that way.
Thank you. So Randy, I'm going, well, after we go through this section, if anybody has questions, I see the live stream coordinator put question in the chat. And can you answer that? So Charlene can put it in the chat and I'm gonna say it out loud. How can I contact representatives for Brooklyn High Schools and District 27? So I'll put it out there. Any other questions regarding nominating committee or the election process? I'm sorry, I keep going to see what is the next slide. And of course, you could always contact us, email us, or email your fellow memberships, because most of us are all not new parents and have expertise, and the way we support CPAC is supporting each other because we are CPAC. Okay, so I'm going to move on to President's Council. So in August, we went over this, but I think it's very important that we go over it again, especially since we have the candidate, we have the citywide community education council campaign going on, to apply past. Right now, we're in the candidate forum phases where we learn the candidates. Is it very important that we strengthen our partnerships between the different fractions of parent leaders, you know, because it takes all of us to make change and to get things done. Honestly, there all have to be different topics like safety, we all can agree on. So as members of President's Council, as per the regs, the collaboration on quarterly meetings, we should be collaborating with our corresponding education council to have at least, it's a minimum requirement. It's not only have to do 4 meetings for the year, but to collaborate on things that's happening for your community, right? And it's one party is not running versus the other. You come up with mutual, well, it's gonna be on the next slide. Holding candidate forums and consultation on filling vacancies is another responsibility for President's Council, right? And you have the right to participate in the process of filling vacancies on the community and citywide education councils. So on this section, this slide, it gives you the Chancellor's regulations. The section is 660. Which regulates President's Councils. Article 1, Section 3, again, will collaborate to establish a mutual agreement, meeting date and time, and agenda topics. So giving updates is not what the quarterly meeting is about. It's about specific topics that's affecting your community, mutually agreed upon. And again, this is the sections of the regs, which shows that candidate forums and consultation to filling vacancies. And it's also regulations D140, D150, D160, D170, which regulates community education councils. That President's Council has the right to consult on filling vacancies. Any questions on that? So see, we have our working groups. Is A655 have met, not as a group, but to how to proceed going forward. So that working group will be back on the A655 working on updating that A655 with specific goals. So that should be happening soon. I haven't heard anything about the roundtable, the equity working group, the digital learning group, and the dyslexia task force. The chancellors have given us update, but that working group hasn't met, but we have been getting updates from FACE and the chancellor. The citywide CEP template meeting group, I'm gonna have a slide to say what was about the last meeting. And the CCEC elections working group, well, we're in the midst of it with the CEC campaigns. So that is our update. We are in the candidate forum stages of that. So the working group is not meeting since the elections are happening now. So for the CEP template and I-Plan working group, what we've been doing is receivership and I-Plan portal updates. And they're re-envisioning we're already working for next school year's comprehension education plan. And we had reviewed the first draft of section 5, and we discussed problem of practice, meaning how schools making SMART goals, preparing their CEPs. And so that's the update. We're looking to see to make it even more friendlier, especially for all stakeholders who are participating in creating their school's comprehensive education plan. Okay, so Rima asks, schools in receivership, are they able to make modifications on their CEPs? They should be able to, but I will take a note of that question and go back to that office and ask that question. And because I don't want to say, yes, they are, but if they are creating the CEPs, they should be able to. So I am making a note of that, Rima, and thank you for that question. Anybody has any questions regarding anything? I think I saw Adrienne put something in the chat. Can you tell me what it was, Randy?
She said that she signed up for a couple of different working groups, but haven't heard back from any. Should she fill the form out again?
Well, working groups or committees, because these working groups already are filled. These are people already, CPAC members are already on these groups. Committees, so we did not send out any for these working group. Only the District 79 website was the recent request for CPAC members to join. And it's not really the task force for D79 website. I see Lydia, you have your hands up. I mean, not Lydia, I'm sorry, Nancy, District 15.
So I was just generally asking, and I'm happy to take this offline, about all of this as a working group and the whole committee.
Okay, yes, we'll take it offline because we are a little bit behind schedule.
That's no problem.
All right. So we already discussed this, the CECs. Anybody has any questions? If they have any concerns about the candidate forums, please let us know. CPAC updates, this is about the committees. So I will look, Adriana, to see if you sign up for which committees. I've been periodically looking to see who've been signing up. I'm gonna remind the chairs to continue to look on the Google form as well. So I will make a note of that as well for you. 3 of the committees already had their committee as well. The capacity building support is the first Tuesday of the month. That was this week. Communications, first Tuesday of the month. That was this week. They had their meetings. High school had their meeting last week, Friday. They're the first Friday of the month. Legislative hasn't given us a date for this month, but they are having one. Special education is tentative for tomorrow. And Title I will have, for this month, have their meeting on March 21st. The Wellness Committee had their meeting yesterday. They're the second Wednesday of the month. Okay, so the links to the Google form you have to sign up is on the website. So there are like 8 committees, so we won't be able to, please revisit the website, and the links to sign up are on CPAC website. Any other questions? I'm trying to go through the chat. Randy, help me out, because I see a lot of typing going on.
I just want to let you know it's 10:05.
Okay, okay. So I'm going to stop here. I think, oh, she's not here yet. So we'll come back to face updates. So at this time, we are going to have asylum seekers. We're going to have Miss Corinne to speak to us. And Corinne, do you need to, I'm going to stop sharing. Corinne, do you need to share your screen?
No, I don't have a PowerPoint or anything.
All right. So you have the floor. Thank you. Good morning. And thank you for showing up this morning to
Of
speak to about
course.
asylum seekers. Thank you.
Of course. Hello, everyone. My name is, good morning, I guess I should say. Happy Thursday. My name is Corinne Christensen. I am on the Students and Temporary Housing team at the Department of Education. Really briefly, our team is tasked with supporting all students affected by homelessness and students in foster care across New York City. We have over 400 school and shelter-based staff that support us, along with a strong central team of over 20 people that support the district, everything from central to district to school level support we provide. I'm going to put a link in the chat to our website on the DOE website, so you can learn more information specifically about what we have, but more importantly, about the rights of students in temporary housing in New York City. The reason I bring that up is because, as many of you know, many of the recently arrived families that have been coming since the summer are entering the shelter system or are considered permanently or temporarily housed. So that's why our team has been doing a lot of support for them. So I just wanted to talk briefly about a lot of the supports we've been providing families. I know there were some questions about language programs as well. That's not something that our team manages or supports, so I can't speak too much about that, but I can speak to the supports that we directly provide families. So the STH team provides on-site support for recently arrived families, whether they are residing in a DHS family shelter, and many of them are in hotels across the city, or one of the city's humanitarian emergency relief and response centers, often called HERCs. You may be familiar with those. We also have staff on site there 5 days a week. And we also provide support at the school level for where our school-based staff sit. So what do those supports look like? So a family arrives at Port Authority, and then wherever they end up with a temporary, if they end up in a temporary housing situation at a shelter or at a HERC, we have staff there to meet and greet them. First and foremost, our highest priority is to make sure that those new families are connected to a school or the family welcome center so that their school-aged kids can enroll immediately into school. That's kind of our top priority. So we help connect them to what they need to enroll in school after the students are enrolled. We then work to connect families with transportation support, whether that's supporting arranging busing to providing Metro cards or connecting them to the school who will provide Metro cards for the family. We connect them to immigration clinics, immunization clinics, and medical clinics. That's been a huge need, making sure they're figuring out how to enroll in health insurance so that they can get the medical support they need, including the immunizations they need for school. We also have done a lot of work around clothing donations and supplies and other concrete needs that these families have. We have worked with schools, the borough response teams, as well as just with other nonprofit partners that have donations. We've courted donations to go out to schools and shelters. We also are working to handle escalations on the shelter side. We are working to handle escalations from schools. We are getting a lot of outreach from schools about students who aren't attending or late pickup or just supports and needs that these families have. And so we work very closely with schools on that. For our school-based staff, where we have 204 school-based staff who are both community coordinators and social workers, we really work to provide similar support, making sure that they are helping families with transportation, immunization, and specifically for our Bridging the Gap social workers, we really focus on that social emotional support for the students and their families as they're adjusting to a new country, working through some of the trauma they may have endured through their journey to get here. Centrally, we've been really working to support our staff with all of that work by making sure that we are working closely with city agency partners, that we're facilitating learning opportunities for our staff to learn about offerings across the city. We've coordinated donation efforts, largely in collaboration with the Department of Homeless Services, to make sure that the families and shelters are really getting what they need. And that's pretty much it. I know that's kind of a little higher level, but we do a lot of different supports. But the biggest thing is that we have staff at the shelters and at the HERCs that are meeting with the families, connecting with them, and are there for a point person that families have when they have questions with anything regarding school, as well as community resources that they need connections to. So that's what I have. I've been looking at the chat. I don't see any questions. I don't know, Shirley, if we can open it up for any questions. I don't know where we are with time. I don't think that was 10 minutes. So
no, yeah, you're good. We're good. And we did start a little behind. So, but Frances has her hands up. So I'll give Frances, District 25, her the floor.
Yeah, just to, sorry, really quickly, just a minute. I think we have I can put my contact information in the chat. I think we have time for a few questions verbally, but if folks have questions in the chat, feel free to put them there and I can also answer those so that we're mindful of time. But yeah, who had their hand up first?
Frances has the floor.
Okay, Frances.
Hi, Corinne. This is Frances. I have a question. I know that this year the budgets were very tight with schools. And now with these new people coming in, is there a separate budget that the government has allotted to give to them, or are they taking from the budgets that already are suffering?
Both. So every school is that has a student in temporary housing is allotted a specific Title I allocation specifically for their students in temporary housing. That budget allocation was adjusted last year, actually, to significantly increase the amount of money that schools get per pupil. So there was that. The challenge with that money is it's determined by the number of students in temporary housing you had the previous year. So as you mentioned, we have schools that now have significantly more students in temporary housing. And the Department of Education adjusted for that by opening up another allocation of funding called Project Open Arms funding that allotted a significant amount of money per pupil to every school that had 6 or more new students in temporary housing in their school to try to bridge that gap. So there was additional money given to schools to support the specific population.
Thank you. Angela from District 8 has her hands up.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for being here. I wanted to just get a further understanding of how we are addressing also the need for bilingual education, not so much, English as second language, but for the bilingual needs as well. And, how many of the students percentage wise are getting those services versus just getting ESL services? As someone myself who, really thrive from that, Spanish was my first language. I just want to see how that is being addressed at this time. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't have any numbers, and the only thing I can speak to is that when we are working to enroll students and make sure they're connected to a school, we do pay very close attention to where the nearest dual language programs are and do they have availability, and how we do keep that in mind as we work with families to figure out the best place to enroll them. And we work with the family welcome centers and other folks to kind of help us determine that so we can balance making sure these students get the programming and support that they need, but also not saying, oh, you can go to a dual language program that's an hour by bus away, and trying to balance that. As to the number of these students currently enrolled in a dual language program or how the city is supporting that in particular, I can't speak to.
Okay. Thank you. If you
Yeah.
could look into that, that would be great. And maybe just send something to Shirley. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that if y'all wanted to connect with like the Office of Multilingual Learners, there's the ones that oversee that. I see you nodding your head. You may have already connected with them. They're the people that oversee managing that.
Thank you. And we will try to get them on this platform to help, speak on that portion of the bilingual learners, the MLLs. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Any other last call for any questions for Corinne before we let her go? And if you have follow-up questions, if you think of later, please put it in the chat and we will send it to Anthony or Corinne directly to get answers.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Perfect.
I'm going to share this.
Thank you.
Share your screen one more time. We have early childhood special education is here with us to talk about early childhood special education in particular when we're talking about early childhood. And so we have Miss Jodina Clanton, who is the Senior Director of Strategy and Policy for Early Childhood. I made you a co-host just in case you would like to share your screen, but Miss Jodina, you have the floor.
Wonderful. Thank you. Everyone can hear me? Just want to make sure is my sound good? Okay.
Yes,
Good
ma'am.
morning. Thank you all for inviting me today to speak a little bit about special education in our birth to 5 early childhood programming. I am also going to give you a brief synopsis of the supports that we provide in our system, and also will lean to my colleague Jessica Wallenstein, who is also here from the Special Education Office, who can support as well. To start, as I mentioned, we are a birth to 5 system that allows supports for children beginning at 6 weeks up until age 5. And so those are children that may be coming into our system and need what is called an IFSP plan. So that is for children between the ages of birth to 2, and then children that may receive services based on an IEP with the ages between 3 and 5. And so in our system, we have very inclusive environments where any child that has any type of support or service based on one of those 2 plans will be welcomed into any of our programs and supported. We have a team from within our division that is dedicated to supporting our programs and our staff to ensure that all of these children are welcomed and supported just the same way that any child would be. And so it's a very inclusive environment, and so that they are getting the least restrictive environment possible. In addition to that, we are very happy that we have entered into a what we call a contract enhancement with the 4410 community-based organizations that provide special education services, that have special classes, as well as integrated classrooms that are both general ed and a special education teacher. And so we entered into an enhancement with them to be able to ensure that those children that were in those programs were going to receive the same type of supports and length of day that our 3K and our pre-K children receive in a general education setting. And so we're very proud of the work that we have done thus far, again, to be really inclusive to all children, and as well as entering into that enhancement with regards to the 4410 contracted CBOs. And just in general, our system, as I mentioned, is a birth to 5 system that is inclusive in district schools, our New York City public schools, standalone pre-K centers, charters, our CBOs, our family childcare networks throughout all of New York City. And so I will pass this over to my colleague, Jessica Wallenstein, who can speak a little more about some of the specifics as it relates to specifically the special education side.
Thanks, Jodina, and good morning, everybody. My name is Jessica Wallenstein, and I lead the committees on special education in the special education office at the New York City Public Schools. And the committees on special ed, or the CSEs, also include the committees on preschool special education. So I'm happy to give just an overview of what the CPSEs do and how services are provided to students in preschool. So I'm speaking specifically about students between the ages of 3 and 5. As Jodina described, children birth up until age 3, so birth through 2, are served by the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene's early intervention system, who provide services that might be in early childhood programs, led by Jodina's team. And then when children turn 3, the service provision moves over to the CPSEs. So the committees on preschool special education consist of 10 regional offices across the city. So there's about 2 per borough. And students who need to be evaluated for preschool special education are connected to a CPSE based on where they live. So about 3 school district areas are connected to each of the 10 CPSEs. And the CPSEs are responsible for managing the referral, evaluation process, and then developing individualized education plans, or IEPs, for preschool students, and supporting the provision of services in partnership with early childhood programs. And so from a family perspective, if they have concerns about their child's development as it relates to their ability to make progress in preschool, they can submit a referral to the Committee on Preschool Special Education associated with their district. They can do this in a number of ways. They can walk into a CPSE office and drop off a referral. They can email it to the CPSE, they can fax it, or they can snail mail it. And then after this, they'll receive direction from the CPSE about next steps, how to get an evaluation. And then once those evaluations are complete, they would join the CPSE for a CPSE meeting where they are determined eligible for special education services or not. And if determined eligible, an individualized plan is drawn up with participation from the family as well as the administrators involved in the process that describe the services and programs that a student needs. And by law, we have to provide services in what's called the least restrictive environment. So for some students who are found eligible, this might mean getting speech therapy or getting occupational therapy. And in those cases where the service is provided by a provider who can be itinerant and travel to wherever the student is, in those cases, the service is provided wherever the student is attending an early childhood program. And in some cases, if they're at home, the providers can provide services at home. For students who have more intense disabilities, they might need a special education program. And again, these are offered on a continuum from least restrictive to more restrictive. So students might be recommended for an integrated program where there's a special education teacher and a general education teacher. And in these cases, the CPSE will arrange for placement in an integrated program closest to the family's home where there is an available seat. And as Jodina described, there are integrated programs offered by the DOE and also in our contracted portfolio. And if a child needs a more intensive setting where they're in what's called a special class, where they're only learning with other students who have disabilities at a very small ratio, that's called a special class, the CPSE will look for placement according to the ratio that the student needs. So that's kind of a very quick overview of how the CPSEs are structured and what the preschool special ed process looks like, but happy to dive into detail on any of those topics more deeply based on the questions that you have. So I'll open it up now to any questions.
Okay, I don't see any hands quite yet. In the chat, we'll give them people, I'm pretty sure. Okay, Adriana, District 28, you have the floor.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for being here today. I just have a quick question about the backlog that CPSEs are experiencing. For context, or as context, there are a few families in my district who are having issues with even getting an appointment. It's March. They've been trying since September, but one parent in particular has met quite a few obstacles. She's been trying to have her pre-K son have his first appointment or meet the first step to be able to move on, like I said, since September. And it's been obstacle after obstacle. So I was just wondering if the backlog will be cleared before the end of the school year, or if she should just try again for kindergarten.
Thanks for that question. So it sounds like you're describing a long wait to get an evaluation appointment. And if that's the case, this is unfortunately a tough scenario where we've seen a pretty exponential rise in students being referred for preschool special ed. We wish there were more evaluators across the city, particularly for students who need bilingual evaluations. What we are doing to address that is we did extend the hours of DOE evaluators through what's called a per session activity. So if you want to, if you're comfortable in the chat, I'll also give you my email. You can send me the student's information and I'll see what we can do to get the student in through one of these DOE evals during the extended hours, because we are seeing, unfortunately, quite a wait list for evaluations, but can take a look at this particular case and make sure every stone has been turned and see if there's anything we can do to get you set up with a DOE evaluator. And my email is just jwallenstein@schools.nyc.gov. So first letter of my first name and then my last name.
Thank you. Shirley, may I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, I don't see anybody else's hands up, so please do so. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have any insight into this, it would be greatly appreciated. But what is the DOE doing to address this issue for next year so that we don't end up in March with kids who have not even had evaluations yet because they've been unable to secure an appointment? We know that the number of children who are being diagnosed and being diagnosed earlier with a number of disorders or a number of issues that require additional support is only rising, especially in this COVID era. So it'd be good to know what the DOE's plan is to not have this happen again next year.
Yeah, I share your concerns here. And, beyond the short term, partial solution of extending DOE evaluation site hours, we're also constantly advocating for additional resources to have more preschool evaluation teams offered by the DOE. So this is a constant conversation and something that we are really working to prioritize.
Thank you.
Thanks
so
for that
much.
question.
I'm sorry. There's questions in the chat. I don't see any other. We have like 2 minutes, and then I'm going to give the floor to Christina. First question. I'm going back. This is from YouTube. What if you don't have a community coordinator?
So I'm not sure I fully understand that question, but I'm wondering if it has to do with how to get help in navigating the process, or how to get in contact with the CPSC potentially if you don't know who is the staff person who can help you. In that case, if that is what you're getting at here, there are email addresses for every CPSC on the DOE's website. I can drop that website in the chat. If you're still having trouble, again, feel free to reach out to me and I can direct you. And then, I can connect you with a staff person at the appropriate CPSC who can help with whatever issue it is that the parent has or navigating the process. Yes, I will drop that website in the chat.
One more question, Jessica and Jordina. When will CPSEs place kids in special class with kids with similar issues? It's broken up: ADHD, dyslexia, small classes. Okay, so it moved for me. Somebody's putting stuff. Or small classes are necessary, but I got it. Small classes are necessary, but not a class with it says SAYED. I'm thinking it's supposed to be special ed kids.
I think with say emotional disturbance. So this is a question that gets at groupings and how the CPSC places students and how they account for different types of disabilities for preschool students. So per state regulations, we must place students in the least restrictive environment, and that is defined as the ratio, the teacher to student ratio and class size that is most appropriate for the student and closest to the student's home. So current practice, given those regs, is that we have heterogeneous groupings based on disability type. And instead, we are focused on ensuring that the student is in an appropriate ratio and is also in a program as close as possible to the student's home. This is where we are now. I think this is feedback that we have received before, and it's certainly something that we could consider through discussions with the state. But currently, preschool special ed does consist of heterogeneous groupings.
Thank you so much. Last call for members to ask questions. And before I thank Jessica and Jondina for taking their time up and to talk about early childhood, in particular, special education. Okay, thank you for taking the time and coming to us this morning. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Thank you. Have a wonderful
Not a
day.
problem.
Thank you.
You too. So next up, we're going to have, I saw Christina's was here. I'm going to share my screen. Christina, you still here?
Yes, I am. Oh,
All right.
man.
So just if nobody knows, now they know. Happy birthday, Christina. Dr.
Oh,
Melendez on this platform.
thank you, thank you, thank you. This is amazing. Thank you so much. It's a great day to have a birthday and have a CPAC meeting. So thank you all for all of this, all that you do, and for this special slide. I know, Shirley, you're very committed to having a great agenda and a PowerPoint that really personifies what we're talking about. And so I'm in it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I am going to turn the floor to you, our Executive Director of FACE, Dr. Christina Melendez.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I know I was running late. I want to start with some updates. So Shirley, I'm sure you sent out your response from the adult learning, the D79 team that has responded to your email, to your letter from last year, and is very much interested in having those conversations. So many of you I see signed up. So I'm really excited to see what happens and how that conversation goes. And let's continue to do that. In that same vein, we have our A655 working group that's going to come back. Right now, we are just in the moments of really just talking to the folks that were in the previous group to get an idea of where we left off and where we want to go, and then to think about other folks that we want to invite to the conversation. But definitely something that's started and we're thinking about very deeply, particularly around things like Title I and the DPAC and Title I chairs and all of the folks that we want to be part of the conversation, as well as like updating our regulation, right? Things have changed in our world since we wrote it, and so it's time, and I appreciate those that have committed to it before my time and those that continue to want to be in conversation with that. So know that that's coming. We are also having a PA/PTA election training for our family leadership coordinators and our family support coordinators. Clearly, you all know that it's really important that they know how those things go. And so we will be hosting those trainings, and that will be March 14th. So just know that that's happening with your district supports. We are clearly in the midst of our elections and particularly our candidate forum season. So there are 22 districts still hosting candidate forums. Please feel free to go on our website to see when your district is having their forum, and tune in. And they're recorded, so if you miss it, know that they will also still exist. Then I want to share that we have parent coordinator trainings every month, And so this month we're having effective outreach strategies. So that's on Wednesday, the 15th. We'll be hosting a huge parent coordinator conversation at 11 a.m. around, what are some ways that we can really support our parent coordinators in reaching out to parents in multiple ways, not just phone calls, not just backpack letters, but how to do those things so that they're more effective and that the information gets to the ground. So that's something that's happening soon. And then I think, I'll list again. And then we want to make sure that all of us are working together to continue to support our families in updating their NICS and either enrolling, updating their NICSA accounts or getting NICSA accounts. You know very well that that's the way our voting system happens. So we want to make sure that everyone has one and is eligible to vote for their representatives on their CECs at their districts. And that's all of me for today. Open for questions. Shirley, I'll let you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking. I forgot to unmute myself. You think by this stage, I will remember
It's okay.
to
It happens
unmute?
to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So first up, District 15, Nancy Cruz.
Good morning, and thank you so much for your presentation. It's always very informative. I just had a quick question about getting parents up onto the NICSA accounts. I had run across an advocacy group that had set up like a whole sheet that had a visual representation of how to sign up for the NICSA and and then the next step, how to vote in the elections. Like, it was very visual. And is there anything like that in existence that I didn't want to like take it because somebody else created it. But is there something that can be created or that exists? I think it would be phenomenally helpful in getting parents to actually do it. It can be overwhelming because it's like all these buttons and all this, like, does that exist? And if it doesn't, can I be on the committee to make it exist? Like, can we make this happen? Shirley,
you're nodding your head. You want to say something?
It exists. There's a PDF slide that goes, I think it's 4 slides long. It has the screenshots with instructions, put your name, put this. Yes. So I want to ask you to do me a favor, Nancy. Please email CPAC so I can send it out, just in case I don't forget, please. But that is already in existence. There is, but if I'm going to share it to you, and then if you feel that it's not sufficient enough, this was created when they, asked everybody to do NISCA for the first CCEC campaign. They had created a slide for parents how to sign up for NISCA. So I have that slide. Many of us do. If I'm correct, it's also on CPAC's website as well, but please send out an email and we can share it.
And then Nancy, I think another piece we have is like the video that exists in Parent University. I believe there's a video that's actually, it's not translated, so it's only in English, but it is, again, also very visual in that sense. I think that the hardest part for our NICSA subscriptions and updates and signups is also the fact that there's this connection or this need for the school piece, right? So the parent coordinator has to provide you with the access codes to it. So sometimes parents are very excited to start this account and then they're like, oh, I need something. And so just reminding families and our PCs that that's something that they need to get beforehand is probably the biggest obstacle in the moment that I hear about. And then adding to that, just what you said, how do we make it more visual? How do we have the resources ready to go so that parents can see it, right? And have it as they have questions. So yes.
Yeah, because it would play also.
So in our schools, I can just say that it's mostly the Spanish speaking.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Nancy.
You're not allowed to do that.
But no, follow. So Tamara had her hands up for a while, but before I know you always stay on the platform. Can you give a link, or Anthony Settle, who's our face liaison? Could you put the link to the PAP? I want to ask Adriana, could you mute yourself, please? to put the link for PAPTA in the chat.
So the PA/PTA training is for our FLCs and our FSCs. It is not for our PAs and PTAs. So once March 14th is over, we're going to give your FLCs and FSCs the tools they need to also provide those trainings to all of your PAs and PTAs at your district level. So that's not a, it's a very like 30, 60, ideally all of our PAs, our FLCs and FSCs attend. And so it's really for them. And that's what we're doing. And if you don't have an FLC or FSC in your district, then definitely reach out to me or put your name in the chat, and I will be happy to figure out how to directly support you.
Thank you, Christina. That question was from YouTube.
Perfect.
Tamara, you have District 20. From District 20, you have the floor.
Okay, one of the concerns, like, thank you for the workshops, because, you know, I am one of the people that really feel like, you know, that the FLCs and the FSC should be going to trainings. I also feel some of our administration should be going to some of these trainings, because we have been having a lot of disconnect between what they're telling a lot of our PTAs what they should be doing and what our PTAs are learning at President's Council or at these workshops. It's a disconnect with that. But my concern is, unfortunately, there are FLCs and there are FSCs that are not conducive to completely doing the role that they're in. So, you know, I am in a situation with one of the FLC that we have. It's not, I don't really feel he's doing a really good job, you know, because a lot of information we do not receive. You know what I mean? Some of the times, like, because I'm straddling the line between middle school and high school. So for my FLC in middle school, I receive a lot of stuff, and the FLC, but in high school, I barely get anything. And if I didn't have a child in middle school, I wouldn't even know what was going on. So I think there needs to be more accountability when it comes to sharing information with the masses, especially with the parent leaders, because a number of us are fairly new to these spaces, and we need this training, and we need to know where to go to get it. So I think that's something that needs to be discussed as well.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on all accounts. I think that's why our team is taking on making sure that our FLCs and FSCs are getting exposed, and we're building capacity. For a while, that has not happened. And this is why we're in this space that you're describing, in part. I think the other piece is that we're happy always to support CPAC in whatever they need. And as they are your direct supports just from the parent leadership space, we want to support CPAC in being able to support you. So if, and as many of you may know, Anthony Settle, he is your FACE liaison to CPAC, and also very, very knowledgeable and experienced in a lot of the things that you may need as parent leaders. And so making sure that you tap into that resource as a CPAC group, and telling us what we need. I think the point you highlight as well, that high school, middle school, the FLC sort of having so many schools, it's different, right? At the high school, it just looks a little different. And so how do we support our FLCs that are supporting our high school superintendents to be able to do the outreach that they need across multiple areas, right? Some of our FLCs are supporting across districts, across boroughs, and some of our FLCs are just focused on one specific area, but there's a lot of schools. So I hear that, and I appreciate you bringing that up, and we're gonna think a little bit more intentionally about, you know, capacity is great, building capacity is important. How do we build, you know, our FLCs and FSCs capacity when they're at the high school level? Because I think that's a special conversation, and I think we can go back and think a little bit more about that. And as for you, I urge CPAC to think about how folks on my team like Anthony Settle can really be supportive of providing some of the things you may need as a group, right? So happy to do that.
All right, thank you so very much. For those who can't see the chat, Catherine put in that the date is March 14th. Like I said, the survey deadline is coming up soon. So please take a note of that. March 14th is the deadline to fill out the New York City school survey. So thank you so much, very much, Dr. Melendez. If, of course, at the end, if you want, there's need to speak more, you always stay to the end. Anthony's here. If there's any further questions, we can move on. I'm going to share my screen. It's time for our next speaker. Give me a second. So our next speaker is Miss Jody from New York City Opt Out. Thank you, and she's going to discuss again the option of opting out for New York State exams. So Miss Jody, you have the floor.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for having NYC Opt Out here with you guys this morning. I am just looking, I am able to share my screen. Okay. This is always the part that makes me sweat a little bit, but we'll hope that it's going okay. It's loading. People can see that? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks. So my name is Jody Dresner Alprin, and I use she, her pronouns, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. I am the parent of a 2022 NYC Public Schools graduate and another one still in the system. And I sit on the steering committee of NYC Opt Out. I'm here today to make sure that everybody knows that parents have the right to refuse the upcoming New York State tests for grades 3 through 8, and to go over a little bit about why you might want to and what the process to do that is. Understanding that I'm going to be throwing a good deal of information at you this morning, I'll also put into the chat the link to our website, as well as an invitation to an info session that we're having this Tuesday, the 14th at 7:30 p.m. with special guest Congressman Jamal Bowman, who we know used to be a principal and is now a representative, going over testing with us. So this year we see in our schools more standardized testing than ever. Like I said, we're coming up on the administration period of grades 3 through 8 exams, which are the federally mandated exams that we must give to every kid in both math and English in grades 3 through 8. Those are going to be in April and May this year. We also have the New York State Regents exams. We just finished an administration period of those for high school students. There's another one in June, and our high schoolers have to pass that in order to graduate. We also have the NYSESLAT, which is for our English language learners, which is a really beast of a test, really time-consuming test that they have to take. And then additionally, this year, we've seen all of these in-class screeners. And if you saw the news, we've just learned that the DOE is asking schools to increase the use of these computerized testing that are doing like sort of daily screening checks on our kids in the hopes that they're going to increase their test scores on these grade 3 through 8 exams. So it's a lot of testing that's happening for our students. And I just wanted to share with you, this is an actual calendar that we've gotten from an assistant principal at the elementary level. And just, you don't really even have to see what the whole scope is. You just have to look where all the color is on the calendar. And basically, if you see color on the calendar, the green one means those are vacation days. So we don't expect the kids to be in school, and that's allowed. But the other ones where you see color means that something in their day is being taken up with standardized testing. So that's either these academic screeners, these new academic screeners that have been added. And we can imagine if this calendar were to be updated with this latest mandate, that there would be even more red on our calendars in March and April with the addition of these computerized daily scanners that the department wants teachers to do. Where you see blue on the calendar, that's where kids are actually taking the tests. So just to really give you a sense of how much classroom time with teachers is being taken away by these standardized tests. And I know that coming out of the closures and the different things that happened during the pandemic, like one of the greatest concerns for everybody across the board, no matter what your take on testing is that we've lost this opportunity for our teachers to be with our students, to be in community with them, to be spending time with them. And you can really see from this slide, like what a challenge it is for teachers when we have all of this testing. That's time that the teacher can't be with the kids. There's no small group instruction. They also might not be getting access to their specials, which is anything that isn't a testing subject, right? So it's a real infringement on teacher student time together and student time together with your other peers in class at a time when we need that more than we ever have in our history. So as I said, these spring tests are coming up. These are the ones for 3 through 8. It starts with ELA. It's important to remember also that it doesn't just impact the age of the kids who are taking the tests, because we rightly have to have different testing scenarios that support our different kinds of learners in every way. Most school buildings have to turn over multiple classrooms to administer the test, which means that kids in younger grades are being kicked out of their classrooms during the time of the administration. Oftentimes, bladed services, support services, so your OT, your speech therapy, things like that, there is no time or space in the schedule for that to happen during the entire administration of these tests. So our kids with disabilities, our kids with special needs are not getting their mandated services in schools for a pretty significant amount of time. And it can even be that kids lose their classroom teacher after the administration of the test, because teachers can be tapped to go and grade tests for other schools. And it's also important to remember that the feedback these tests are giving, whether you think that feedback is valid or not, does not return to the school until the fall of the following school year. So teachers will not receive feedback on these tests while the students are still within their classrooms. So they cannot impact their instruction, because the kids are no longer in the classroom and aren't those students. A lot of times we talk about this and people are like, well, I took standardized tests when I was a kid. And I mean, I do. I like remember that like brown Scantron sheet and you had to bubble in the whole thing. But these tests are not the same as the ones that we took when we were kids. The content is really different. Right now, you can still take them paper and pencil, but there is a big shift, and we are expecting that everybody is going to have to take them in future years on the computer. And that is going to be a big challenge, especially for our kids who have the least access to technology on a regular basis, for our youngest learners, for our kids with special needs, for our English language learners. And so the point of these tests, they're supposed to assess whether students are meeting state standards, and that is in an effort to narrow what people have called an achievement gap, right? But at New York City Opt-out, we challenge that assertion. We're not sure that these metrics, we're all about assessment, but we don't think this assessment is actually measuring that effectively. And so I just want to get a lot of times folks never see the test at all. Like we talk about it, but you don't get to see it. That's in part because the test in its full is never released to the public. So we are at the mercy of the test makers to release a few things for us to see. But this is one of them. This is a math test for a 3rd grader. And it just is, the first thing that's striking about it is there's very few numbers for a math question, right? There's a lot of language on this page. So already we're seeing that a lot of what's being tested on this math test is actually your ability to read and synthesize and figure out what the question is being asked in English before you even get to the math, right? So this is Jimmy's teacher asked him to describe a situation in which the number of objects could be represented by 24 divided by 4. Jimmy started his description shown below. Complete the description so that the number of objects can be represented by 24 divided by 4. A pet store has a total of 24 fish, right? So that's a lot of words already. We have 2 different answers here. One, the kid got a little bit turned around and did 24 divided by, no, they both did 24 divided by 4. On the left-hand side, 16ths each had 4 fish, 24 divided by 4 equals 6. And then we see a different representation on the right-hand side. And these 2 would have very different scoring, right? On the left-hand side, we see the use of the word each. And so that student is actually getting more points than the student on the right, because the student on the right did not say each or equal. which is really a word problem. That's really sussing out what's going on in the English language. It's not so much about math. We can see they each have a representation in drawing, that you would have the number of fish in the bowl. They understand the math behind it, but the child on the left is getting far more credit than the child on the right. Another couple of answers with this, same question. They had 4 fish tanks. How many fish go in each fish tank is one child's answer, and the other child's answer is solely numbers. 24 divided by 4 equals 6. Now, the answer on the left, we're not even sure if mathematically the child knows what the answer is, but this child actually gets more credit on the test because they have procedurally answered the question more effectively by writing out their answer. The child on the right has only represented it with numbers and therefore is not getting as much credit. And this is an issue just to say, like, we cannot be sure then, we can't say that the scores that are coming out about students are really measuring what they're saying they are. And especially because we can't see the tests and we can't see the answers, but just knowing from these that there can be so much variance and so much in the math is dependent on your ability to read. We know that these are maybe not scores that can really be trusted to say how a child is doing in class. So we know that thinking back to that calendar, so much time is spent on test prep to be able to do these very specific skills about like figuring out the word problem for the math thing. And we don't have that much instructional time, and we've missed so much instructional time in the last couple of years that this is not really the moment to be taking more of it away from our students. The test prep and testing is incredibly, incredibly expensive at a moment when we're hearing that there's going to be additional cuts to the department. The money that is spent on testing could fund smaller class sizes, it could fund services, it could fund after school enrichment, it could fund so many other things, and instead it just channels into this very narrow, not super reliable stream. The other thing that we now have years and years and years and years and years of data that and the same thing that it shows us the same thing every year. There's nothing surprising. We could predict what kids are going to get what scores before they even sit down to test. And what it says is scores correlate with family income. So the lower scores will be where there is a higher amount of poverty. And so instead of taking all of this money and putting it into tests that show that to us over and over again, we could direct that money directly to those areas where we already have identified need and resource those schools, resource those communities, resource those families and that staff. When we have so much test prep, it also means that there are other things that are being from the curriculum. Tested subjects are English and math. That means social studies is not happening as much. It means science is not happening, arts, music, drama. And we know that we want to be having kids who are college and career ready. And part of that is allowing them access to things that are going to build them as citizens, understand that they have responsibilities to one another, build their critical thinking. And none of that happens in test prep. Tests also stand in the way of project and student-centered learning, a different approach rather than the sort of kill and drill test prep. And in fact, our own chancellor knows this. He wrote a beautiful op-ed that says, we must transform how we measure performance. Over-reliance on standardized tests has removed the joy from learning and devalued our schools. We've become so focused on teaching to the test that our schools have become disillusioned and uninspired. We need radically different measures to determine proficiency in core subject areas. We must invest in performance-based learning through projects and portfolios, and we must allow them to do it at their own pace. So all of those are reasons why we might not want to have students sit down for the tests. There's a lot of myths, a lot of fear that happens around tests. They feel very scary, and so oftentimes that means that our families think, though, well, I just have to follow, what this is because that's what's being said. So we just want to make it clear. They don't really show if a student is meeting state standards. The child's classroom teacher will really know because teachers are professionals and they assess our children on a daily basis. They have a very clear understanding of what's happening with our students. Scores are not needed to get into middle or high school admissions. Even in the dark old days when my children were applying and the scores were a factor, if you didn't have scores, schools have to have a separate rubric to admit you. And that's true for kids without scores, but it's also true for kids who are moving from the private system into the public, coming from another state until now. So there is always a way. We have scores and scores of children who have opted out through the years, who have gotten into top choice schools, who've gone on to go to top choice colleges with lots of merit money. It doesn't impact that at all. You do not have to have a student take the test in order to secure their special education services. And your school or district is not going to lose funding if the students opt out. We also hear a lot about what kids have to take these tests so they'll be ready to take tests later on. And students will later get the opportunity to practice test taking. You know, kids, I have a kid who's going to be taking, studying for the driver's test. There was no need to have them take that start working on driving when they were in 3rd grade. That wasn't developmentally appropriate. Now we have supports and they can learn about them driving, and the NYC Schools has great support for kids who, if they want to take the SAT or the ACT later on, can prep for that. And lots of colleges are also going test optional. So your student might not even need the SAT or the ACT. So I just want to make this super clear so that you can make it clear to your families. It is absolutely true that schools are required to administer these tests for grades 3 through 8. They absolutely have to, but your child is not required to take them. Parents have the right to refuse to allow their children to take them, and your child and your child's teachers cannot be penalized for your actions. If you have any questions about that, I can point you to the New York State Education Department, where it says exactly the same thing that I've just said. There can't be any retribution, and you absolutely have the right to make your own choice for your family about whether or not your child participates in the tests or not. When you join the opt-out movement, you're joining a nationwide effort. It's one of the things that has really impacted change here in New York City over the years. It's why the tests are shorter now. It's why they are no longer coupled to teachers' reviews. It's why we have taken away school reviews coupled with testing, all of which has been really important. The opt-out movement has been at the forefront of making those changes. And when you join us, you continue to say, that's not the kind of school environment that we want for our children. We really want this robust teacher and student-led support. And the only thing that you or your families have to do is write a letter to your principal saying, I'm going to refuse these tests for my child. It's possible that the school will say, oh, you need to come in and have a meeting with your principal. You're absolutely welcome to take that meeting, but you are not required to. The only thing that you're required to do to opt out is to send that letter. And we have sample letters both in English and Spanish on our website, which I'll link in the chat. And we have that meeting that's coming up on Tuesday night, which I'm also going to link in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see the chat. I think that there's some questions.
Okay, unfortunately, the Chancellor is on. It's time. So I acknowledge, Francis, you have your name. I see you're good. Okay, so thank you.
Yeah. Let
Chancellor.
her finish what she's doing. It's all good. Yep.
All
Thank
right,
you, Chancellor.
All right. Jody, the Francis from District 25 has her hands up, and then there's 2 questions in the chat, I believe.
Great.
I just wanted to know, because I often say, a lot of times, a lot of the schools are saying it's not called opt-out, it's refusal. I think in Long Island, they called it opt-out. So there's a lot of terminology that needs to be clear. And we always have to send in a letter. But I have to say that my child was graded very poorly at one point, and the state exam was a leverage for me to show where my child was at, and it was higher than what they had graded her. So I think that sometimes parents can use these tests as a positive for their leverage, because we need to know how our child is doing. Are the tests equitable? I don't think so. I think that there's a lot of materials on there. I always print out last year's exams, and I can't even understand what they're asking, which I feel that's what we really need to focus on. But the state also needs to know that, make sure, like, how does the state know that everyone's doing their job? with our children who are the next generation. I mean, we
Absolutely.
can't just eliminate these tests. We need to find another way to make sure. My main thing is, we're so much in testing, we need to focus more on supporting these children, because we're just testing them and identifying that they don't know something. But then what is the plan? Who's going into these schools and making these plans? Maybe each school, since they have their own CEP, should make their own internal exam for their whole school, because if everyone's supposed to be on the same curriculum, they can make up the question and give it to the kids to see where they are and submit those to the state, and they can follow up on support plans for these children.
Absolutely, Francis. I think it's a huge point that you raise, and it's really important. New York City opt-out is not against assessment. We actually believe that robust assessment is vital and important in our classrooms. We just think these tests, as you say, are not it. They're biased. They are not giving us the information that we need. They're a drain of resources that absolutely could be going directly to the schools to do the things that they know through their own assessment they need. So I absolutely agree with you. We have to have other metrics, like Chancellor Banks has said himself, like performance-based learning, performance-based assessment is a fantastic measure of how children are really doing, working in concert with our professional teachers and administrators in schools to understand the kind of assessment that they are doing, and giving the money and support to them as opposed to these testing companies will make a huge difference in the kind of assessment that we have access to, so that we can really see how our children are doing. And it's not just a measure of if they've been prepped to do these very narrow, very specific things on tests that have been shown to be biased, to be racist, to not be supportive of kids with disabilities, all of those things. So thank you for raising that point.
Thank you. So Jody, I'm going to ask two more questions, and then we're going to move on to our agenda item. So the first question is this computerized instruction being done with a teacher in the room?
Well, by law, the teacher has to be in the room. So I'm going to say I imagine that it is, but it isn't being done. This would be just like between your child and a screen that would happen. It's not like you're thinking of where a teacher is with the class and is guiding that instruction. So it would be very different, but a teacher will have to be in the room. Yes, if they operate, as I understand, screeners have so far, the teacher can't even really help the child when they're at that screener, because they're not just like on the state test. Teachers are not allowed to interfere or to offer suggestions or help or anything like that. So they will be monitoring the children taking the assessments on the computer, but that's as far as the interaction can go.
And thank you. And how many times, I'm going to ask people, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself, please. Yvette Christopher, could you mute yourself? Or somebody mute her for me. So the next question I'm going to ask is, how many times a parent can opt out of testing for their child?
So a parent can opt out of all of the 3 through 8 tests in math and English. That you can have a child such as mine who never takes them through their entire school career. You have to send a letter each year saying that you wish your child to opt out of them. Regents, I see in the chat a question about regents. Regents are a different story, and as of right now, kids cannot opt out of them because they are required for graduation. And there's a whole working group that's investigating that, and maybe there will be changes around that. But we're talking specifically, when we're talking about refusing the test today, we're talking about grades 3 through 8 in math and English, and you can opt out all of those grades, every grade 3 through 8 every year. You just have to send a new letter each year.
All right, thank you, Jody. There's more questions in the chat. Please answer them for us. We need to move on to our next agenda.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to the Chancellor for giving the extra time. I really appreciate it as well.
Thank you for coming on as well. So of course, no introduction is needed, but we have our New York City DOE Chancellor David Banks, to speak to us this morning. So Chancellor, you have the floor.
Yes, good morning. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate your leadership. Thank you for having me on. I'm trying to get away from New York City DOE Chancellor, and the terminology I'm using, and we are trying to use more and more, as New York City Public Schools. My sense of it is that the DOE has such a negative connotation for so many folks. And we're trying to rebrand this. We're the only school system in the nation that doesn't talk about schools in our name when we say Department of Education. It sounds like a bureaucracy. So we're trying to be much more parent-friendly, community-friendly. And any city you go to around the country, it's Chicago Public Schools, Atlanta Public Schools, and we want it to be New York City Public Schools, not DOE. So we're trying to put DOE to rest, put it to bed, and moving on into a brighter future. Part of that brighter future for us and ways in which we want to engage parents and families and communities in a better way is by being more transparent. You know, if we're going to work together to solve problems, one of the first things you have to have is a level of transparency. And so I sought to use the few minutes that we have here today to just give you a little overview on an issue that I think a lot of parents and a lot of people, quite frankly, who don't understand how the budget actually works, where the money comes from, and how it's spent. Where does it go? So today's session is just meant to be an attempt to be more transparent and give people at least a solid overview of what we're doing with our school dollars. Does that sound okay?
Of course.
Really? All right. So I'm joined by Emma Videra, who's our COO, and she's going to work with me just to try to give a little overview. All right, great. Emma, good morning.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for having me.
All right, very good. Let's rock and roll. Let's go to the first slide. So the first thing I want everybody to know is how large is our budget? Our budget is $37.6 billion. That's billion with a B, right? A lot of money. But here's what I want folks to understand. 41% of the budget, right off the top, we really don't have much control over at all. And it kind of comes right off the top. And let us walk you through what those dollars are, where they go, because that totals $15.5 billion that before we get to spending anything, this is funding that we're locked into. So the first couple that we have here, we spend $7.3 billion every year on employee benefits and pension. And then another $3.2 billion on debt payments, right off the top. So why don't we, Emma, just let folks know, what does that mean? Both of those numbers.
Yeah, of course. Thanks. So employee benefits and pensions. This is basically our healthcare, our retirement, and our other benefits, mostly for our current employees. So our past employees, their pension costs sit somewhere else. We have pension funds, but for our current employees this year, we're paying in $7.3 billion. Again, healthcare, retirement costs, et cetera. Small piece of that is healthcare for retirees, very small piece, but that's what that one is. And that's to support our very large staff across our schools and our central staff. Debt payments. So New York City public schools, we have a lot of facilities. We make enhancements in those facilities. We build new buildings. A lot of that work happens through the school construction authority, but the way that's usually funded is through bonds, through loans to us. And these are the payments back on those loans. So this is the payments we're making each year for the facilities, for the capital work, and for the big IT projects we do on behalf of our schools and our kids.
And again, it's very important to know these are dollars that are in play. No matter what else is happening with our budget, these are dollars that get paid out every year. Go to the next set of. Now, here's the one that I think most people would be very interested in knowing. We spend $3 billion every year on charter schools. Now, if we're the New York City public school system, why would we be spending $3 billion on charter schools, you ask? Okay, Emma, let's explain so folks understand what that $3 billion means, where it comes from, and why we pay it.
Yeah. So the short answer to the why is New York State tells us to. So this is $3 billion. Again, this is just this year, and this is through a set of mandated payments by the state. So these are things the state tells New York City we need to do. One chunk of this money is for facilities. So as you all know, some charters in New York City are co-located. They sit in our public school buildings. For those that do not sit in our public school buildings, for those that we don't find co-located space for, New York State then requires us to pay for their leases in other buildings. So that's written into state law. People often ask sort of why we work so hard to co-locate schools. It's always hard work to figure out how to do that. And it's always controversial and raises questions. One of the reasons we do that, and we work pretty hard to do it, is because otherwise we're still on the hook for those additional costs that we're paying out of our budget. So that's one piece of this money. The other piece of this money is basically per student payments to charters. And so New York State requires that we pay charters for each student that is going to them. That number fluctuates depending on the number of students in charter schools. So it can go up or down, but it's not something we're directly controlling.
Yeah. Some of these numbers can be a little complicated, but the big picture here to understand is this. If you have students who go to regular New York City public schools, the city, the state, and primarily give us funding to support those students. If those students turn around and leave and go to a charter schools are still public schools. The state is still has a requirement. Those dollars will follow those students. So the challenge for us is that when those dollars flow, they flow through our public schools system, but they have to go to pay for those kids in charter schools. That's fair enough. Somebody put up charter schools and not public schools. By legal definition, they are public schools. They're not private schools by legal definition. That is why the state requires us. This is not something that the chancellor determines or the mayor. The state requires us to pay. So what does that mean? I just want to emphasize something Emma just said. Whenever a charter school gets approved and we have to find space for them, the reason why we work so hard is to find a space in one of the traditional public schools and so that we don't have to spend extra dollars. We currently spend over $200 million on rent every year for charter schools. That if those charter schools were in our regular buildings, we wouldn't have to spend that money. So every time a community comes out and says, we don't want that charter school in our neighborhood or in our school, there's no room for them, fine. We then have to find private space for them. And we spend even more money to do that. So you think about that $200 million for rent that we spend now, those are dollars that we could be using for our public school students, but we can't because we have to pay the rent. We are mandated by law to do that. And again, this is an issue where most people really just don't know about this. And I just wanted people to have a better understanding. You may have a difference of opinion about it, but I just want to present some of these facts so that you are clear. Again, that $3 billion comes right off the top. We don't have anything to say about that. Let's go to the next one that we don't have anything to say about. There's another $2 billion that go to non-public and contract schools, primarily having to do with our special education mandates. So when we have students who have special needs, who their families feel as though our school system does not have the resources or the proper setting to meet their needs, we again are mandated by law to pay for those families to get what they need, even if it's in a private school setting. So either we provide it or it has to be provided elsewhere and we pay for it. And so that is, we spend $2 billion a year. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that because people need to have a good understanding what that means.
Yeah. And so the big bulk of that money is, as the chancellor said, flowing to non-public schools in a variety of ways to serve students with special needs. Some of these are Carter cases. Some of these are sending students with really significant disabilities to state contract schools, which are particular schools set up by the states to serve students with specific severe disabilities. Some of these are providing related services to students in private schools. And all of those make up the bulk of these dollars, and all of those are for students with disabilities. A very small slice of these dollars are actually going to private schools because the federal government requires we do so. And so when the federal government sends us our largest federal funding streams like Title I, there's an actual requirement in federal law that a portion of those goes to private schools as well. And so a small slice of this $2 billion is due to those federal requirements.
For several years, we would spend about $300 million a year for Carter cases. We now spend close to $1 billion a year. And so that's a challenge that we have. We have a number of questions that are coming up in the chat. I don't know, Emma, if you have people in your team or Kenita, Deputy Chancellor Lloyd, anybody that could properly respond. Otherwise, let's capture them so that we can, in fact, get back to people and get them some of these answers. But right off the top, everybody, I just want you to see, before we get to anything else, every year, this is $15.5 billion that comes right off the top, 41% of the budget. So that leaves us with about, 59%. Let's go and take a look now at where the remaining $22.1 billion, now the 22.1, we have a little bit more say over that. But you'll see here that even within the 22, some of these things are pretty fixed costs. Let's take a look at that. The first thing that we have here, we spend $2.2 billion on early childhood. Let's talk about that, Emma.
Yeah, so New York City has the largest early childhood program in the country, and we're spending $2.2 billion this year. This represents our entire early childhood portfolio. So this represents our district, school, 3K and pre-K programs. This represents our very substantial, about half of it is our very substantial CBO sector, the CBOs that we're providing funds to support our early childhood program, and it represents the 0 to 5 sort of birth to 5 continuum, not just 3K pre-K, but more broadly than that. And so that's our current support for that this year, which has been increasing rapidly over time. A good chunk of that money is actually due to one-time federal stimulus dollars, but that's our current money that's going to that.
Yep. What's the next thing that we spend on? School operations, right? This is $4.3 billion that we spend every year. And what does school operations entail? That entails facilities. When our kids come to school, we got to be able to turn the lights on. We've got to have custodians who can keep the schools clean. We would all agree that those things are important. We pay for that. We've got to feed our kids. We serve over 800,000 meals daily. Kids come to school, they got to eat. They're supposed to eat. We pay for that. Transportation. All of the busing services. Got the largest busing operation in the nation. We got to get our kids to school. We pay for that, right? School, and then we've got school safety as well. And we'll talk to you, Emma, when we talk about how all 4 of those pieces actually work together.
Do you want me to do that now or when we get to the next slide?
Okay, yeah. We'll wait until we get to the next slide so folks can see it. Okay, very good. Yep. But it's school operations, everybody. We got to keep the trains running, if you will. We got to keep the schools moving. Next thing on our operations is this. So we spent $100 million, $300 million on central offices and $300 million at our superintendent's offices. When I came in, I got rid of the executive superintendent's level position, but we have fortified our superintendent's positions to be in full support of the schools. And then all the other central operations, including the Chancellor's office, each one of those only represents about 1% of the overarching budget. So a lot of times, there's a narrative around all of this waste, and if you just get rid of all of these people, if you got rid of the Chancellor and everybody that works for the Chancellor, you're only talking about 1 to 2% of the overarching budget. That is not where the majority of our dollars go anyway, right? So it's important to note that the majority of our money and our dollars, actually the biggest chunk of the budget, goes directly to the schools, okay? And so the schools get $15.1 billion goes directly into the
So
K
at
to
the time,
12.
I couldn't remember. So I said, that's a small enough group, and it's
I
doing.
think somebody's not muted. Okay, Emma, let's talk a little bit about that 15 billion real quick.
Yeah, so that 15 billion is the money that's flowing through to our schools. A good chunk of that money is fair student funding, which is sort of the city's big contributory formula that we put in. And as folks know, we just ran a working group to try and think about how we could improve equity in that formula and improve how well the formula is serving schools and kids. So a big chunk of this money is fair student funding, but it also includes other funding streams as well, like IDEA for students with disabilities. And this is money that's flowing to schools. Large chunks of it, principals have a lot of flexibility over. So for example, fair student funding, principals have a lot of flexibility over how they spend that money on teachers or art programs. And that's all flowing down to the school level.
Great. Okay, go ahead. What's our next slide? Okay, so let's take a closer look at the operations budget. Go ahead. So these are the things that I mentioned, but you can see specifically, these are the dollars that are spent. And I want to make sure, Deputy Chancellor Lloyd, that we send this presentation out to those who are on this call. Or if you can send it out to Shirley, then she can make sure the other folks can get it. Either way, we want to make sure that everyone has this. This is not supposed to be a secret. Okay, it should be in everybody's hands. Everybody needs to know exactly what we're doing. But take a look at this chart, everybody. You can see the specific dollars that are spent. Emma?
Yeah, so as the Chancellor said, this is all the things that get our schools up and ready and spots for our kids and feed our kids. So we serve 800,000 plus meals daily across the city. We'll spend this year about $500 million serving those meals. Large chunk of that is on the staff serving them. We run 9,000 bus routes a day, serving kids across the city and beyond, serving 150,000 students. We have 100 million square feet of space clean. So this is our facilities money. This is keeping our custodians in our schools. This is keeping our schools clean. This is keeping our lights on, keeping the energy on, electricity, water. And then we have 4,000 school safety agents across our schools. So busing transportation is 1.6 billion this year. Facilities, including all those utilities costs, 1.8 billion. And then school safety agents is another 400 million. Quick flag about this is, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, tell them about the school safety agents, because that's one that's always a little confusing to people. They said about the connection between NYPD.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is money that's showing up in our budget, but that goes over to NYPD for the school safety agents. And so that's 400 million that comes to us, but we're a pass-through basically to pay for school safety agents over there. And that actually gets the last thing I was going to say, which is one of the things behind these numbers is that a lot of these numbers are really going to staff, right? This is going to our food workers. This is going to our custodians. This is going to our bus drivers and our school safety agents. As you'll see in our school budgets as well, that's where a lot of the money in our budget really goes, is to support people on top of the benefits portion of that first slide you saw, which is of course also about supporting our people.
Yep. Let's go to the next slide. I don't see it. Is it still up?
Yeah, it's up. It's just the intro.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Right. So this is really about the dollars that are actually going into the schools. This is the 15.1 billion that goes to the schools. But I want you to have a closer look, everybody, at what does that mean when we say it goes to the schools? You can see the specific breakdown here. Emma, let's walk them through it. The majority of this goes to pay for the people, for the teachers, the school aides, all the paraprofessionals, the principal, the assistant principal, the guidance counselor, all of the folks who work in our schools, who help support our kids in any way. What about our nurses? What about our nurses, Emma? Are the nurses wrapped up in here? We can't hear you.
Sorry,
Are you
that's a
muted?
good question. Yes, a chunk of our nurses are wrapped up in here. I'm not sure they all are because some of them, as you know, some of our nurses are contract nurses who we bring in,
Right.
and I'm not
Right.
sure they're showing up here in our central
Yeah,
spend,
that's a small
but our school
percentage.
ones,
Yeah,
it's a small no,
that's a
yeah.
small percentage. Yeah. But most of our nurses, our principals, all of our people, our librarians, anybody that's working in our school, our music teacher, our art teacher, all of those folks are wrapped up here. Let's walk them through a little bit of this chart.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's similar to the school operations one, right? So of our 15.1 billion that's flowing to our schools, almost 13 billion of that is just going to our people. And so the largest chunk is for classroom staff and school leadership. So that's teachers, that's principals. You can see the numbers if you can slide of the specifics of some of these teachers, principals, paras. Counselors, APs, and deans are all wrapped up in that 10.7 billion, and that's across our whole system, all community school districts and other districts.
We have 73,000 teachers. I mean, there's no school system anywhere even close to that. We have 70, that's just teachers. And you can see 20,000 paras. I mean, these are the people who make the system go. But we have to pay for that. And that's where the biggest chunk of our dollars actually goes to our personnel and our people who are working in our schools. All right. Let's go to the next slide. All right. Because I know in the interest of time, we just have a couple more minutes. Where does our money actually come from, Emma? Let's talk to them about the dollar flow.
Yeah. So far, all we've been talking about is where the money goes. This is where the money comes from. So out of our $37.6 billion budget this year, over half of that money is actually coming from New York City. So New York City is currently paying for over half of our budget. Second largest contributor is New York State. New York State this year is paying for a little bit over a third of our budget, $36 billion. And then basically the remainder is coming from the federal government. So the federal government this year is paying for $4 billion of our budget. The one quick flag about that, and I think I saw somebody maybe note something about this in the chat, is that $4 billion of federal money, that's not permanent money. So a couple of years ago during near the beginning of COVID, the federal government passed a couple bills to support school system, to support everybody, but that made major investments in school systems due to the pandemic. And that money lasted for a few years. And so we're still relying on that one-time money this year. We're still spending $2 billion of that money this year. We'll have roughly $1 billion left of that extra money for next year. And then after that, that one-time money is gone. There's no expectation that the federal government's going to continue that. So that means this $4 billion is usually more like $2 billion. And that's one of the things we're looking ahead to, unfortunately.
That's the reality, everybody, that we are facing. The stimulus money is running out. And there have been some folks who've come to rely on that money. And that when that money runs out completely, it is going to have implications on what we are doing in our schools. There's no way around that. You don't lose that many billions of dollars and think that nothing is going to change. So those are where the tough decisions get made around what we can keep, what we can't keep. And every program is important. Trust me, I meet with people who come in every single day to tell me, whatever you do, don't cut the affinity schools. Whatever you do, we know you're heading for tough fiscal times, but you can't cut community schools. Don't cut art. Don't cut music. You can't cut anything. Don't cut libraries. Don't cut technology. You cannot cut anything, even though they know we do not, the dollar flow is not what it once was. That's why it's tough when you sit in this position that I sit, and figuring out how we continue to do the things that we do. So anyway, let's talk about one last slide, I think here, or last two slides. This just talks about the difference, everybody, around, 20 years ago, we almost got the same amount of money for our public schools from the city and from the state. We get less from the feds. That has been pretty consistent over the years. That's on the bottom. But on the top in the green, that's the city. And the state, 20 years ago gave, 44% to the schools, and the city gave 45%. It's almost the same thing. Now, if you look all the way to your right, you'll see 20 years later, the city gives 54% and the state gives 36%. The state has given much less of its a share to support our public schools. And the city is now counted on to cover that gap. That's where we have one of the biggest challenges. So you can see it for yourself. Now the city does 54-36. That's an 8% difference, whereas it was only a 1% difference before. But in spite of that, our final slide, per student funding has continued to go up over the last 5 years. So while we know there's a lot of noise that's made around and a lot of pushback around funding and for schools, please talk about that a little bit, Emma, of what people can see here in this last and final slide.
Yeah. So sorry. And this is the last one, we promise. Yeah, so this just looks at that last slide the Chancellor walked through is about what percentage of the money is coming from each level of government over the past 10, 20 years. This is just about what's the total budget for New York City public schools over the past 5 years. So as you can see, our overall budget has grown pretty substantially from fiscal year 2019 from about 33.6 billion to 37.6 billion. That's an increase of 12%. Large chunk of that is due to those one-time federal stimulus dollars I mentioned, but another large chunk of that is due to, and I see Senator Jackson here, is due to New York State making good on its CFE commitments and are seeing increased state aid because of that. And so that's how our overall budget has increased. Our per student budget has actually increased far more substantially in that time because as our overall budget has increased and our enrollment has decreased, we're overall spending more per student. So it's increased from 25,800 to a bit over 31,000 we estimate this year, an increase of roughly 20%.
So Emma, thank you for that. Shirley, that wraps up what we wanted to share with all of you. I'm not sure if we have much time. We might have time for a question or two. I know there were lots of things in the chat, lots of questions that were raised, and our team will work to get you responses for all of those. This was meant to be an overview. We certainly hope that it was helpful in our attempt to be more transparent around what the actual budget actually looks like for New York City public schools.
Thank you, Chancellor. Senator Jackson, first question, are you expecting someone else from your team to be on this platform with you?
I am on here with my policy director, Erin Rose.
Is she on?
Yes.
Is she's already on. She's already on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's someone there that says iPhone. I want to make sure that's not Erin.
That's not Erin. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Absolutely. And do you have time if we can have membership ask the Chancellor one or two questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. So Adriana, well, first we're going to let Kathy Gotsky. She didn't speak. You have the floor.
Thank you, Shirley. And good morning, good afternoon, Chancellor. That was really wonderful, and we appreciate that very much. First, I want to say we're doing great things in District 26, and Danielle Junta is doing an incredible job with her team. So I wanted to give you that feedback.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, I also, Chancellor, just want to highlight for you and your team, and I don't think I need to do it for the parents on the call, but today, this afternoon, high school decisions are coming out. And I just want to let you know, Chancellor, from a parent of 4 and very involved parent, an 8th grader of my own, Chancellor, today is a very, very stressful day. And, you know, kids, you know, texting, they're nauseous, they don't want to go to school. So I just wanted you to know it. I know you know it, but I want to say it so that we really know what anxiety it builds. I also, Chancellor, I want to also thank you. I think last meeting you talked about your initiative and trying to work towards solving a problem with violence around school buildings. And I want to applaud you for making good on it and having an NYPD school administration weekly meeting to try to tackle these issues. Just some feedback from parents and presidents, council, PTA presidents. Parents, we think should be in that venue, in that room. At least the president of President's Council for the district, the president of CC. We are the boots on the ground, the ears in the room, in the community. So I'm just giving you that feedback on behalf of my parents in my district. That
I like that. Thank you.
We don't need another. I surely don't need another meeting on my calendar. But we think it's important just to have to sort of like close that circle and have the CEC president and President's Council president invited to those meetings. So that's my feedback. And again, thank you for everything, Chancellor.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the feedback from you. I've always heard, I've generally hear the critique, right? But here, you got a superintendent, things are working well. People are not always so quick to tell me that things are going well. They tell me everything that's wrong. So I always appreciate when you say something like Superintendent Junta and the work that she's doing and how she's leading the district, things are flowing nicely. I know it's tough for kids. One of the things we try to do was move the decision time up earlier as well. But at the end of the day, there's still going to be that day where everybody's got to wait and hear. And it's tough, but hopefully we can get it out of the way now. But we expect the vast majority of kids are going to be happy with where they wind up. There's always going to be a small percentage of kids who they can get into the school of their choice. Even though they work hard, we're doing everything we can to try to help. But some of those are just the reality of what we're going to deal with. But I do appreciate you raising that. And the last one, let me look into that around who else might be able to join, if there's any present council folks or anybody else on those weekly Zooms. Those weekly Zooms were meant to help increase the level of communication so we can get out in front of this. One of the things I would ask all of you to help us to do is to encourage all of our parents associations to be a part of the process of providing safe passage for our kids, particularly in some of the areas where we know this is a real concern. We've got to get parents out as well. The safety of our kids is not just for the chancellor or the NYPD. It is the community. It is the village. It is parents coming and saying, we will volunteer, after school to be out there for 30 minutes, to be an extra set of eyes and ears, to keep our eyes. The kids who want to act up won't act up if they see adults as a presence. So we don't want it to just be NYPD. We don't want it to just be school safety agents in the New York City public schools. Let's get parents. Parents say to me all the time, we want to be involved. This is how you can get involved as well. So let's begin to spread that message around how our parents can be more engaged by helping keep our kids safe too.
Thank you. So this is going to be our last question for you, Chancellor, to respect people's time. Adriana, you have the floor.
Hi, Chancellor Ranks. Thank you for being here. I have a quick question about the budget and what you were saying about fair student funding. So when the mayor released the preliminary budget, the line item for the DOE looks like it was going to be cut by an additional $800 million. And that's above or in addition to the cut of $176 million that was made in November. Are we advocating for a restoration of all of the cuts in addition to FSF being fully funded? Because if we're not doing that, then we're still in the hole.
Listen, when the mayor comes out with his executive budget, it's the beginning of a process, right? They are in a full-on negotiation with the city council. I think everybody here should be very focused on telling your city council the things that you think are needed, what are the priorities, and to fight like heck, right? The mayor has fiscal responsibility for the city and try to make the best decisions that he can. I can tell you personally, the mayor loves our kids, our families. He wants to do the right thing. He's also working with a very finite pot of dollars. We've lost 120,000 families in the last 5 years from our schools. That has implications. But at the end of the day, Everybody's got to negotiate for the best deal. As chancellor, I have to activate a budget that I'm given, not the one that I wish that I had. The one that I wish that I had, we'd had everything for every school with no questions about it. That's what any chancellor wants. But the reality often falls short of that. So I say to all of you, be engaged, be in this fight on behalf of the kids and our schools to get everything that they need to get. That's the role that you should all be playing. That's the role that you're getting ready to have Senator Jackson come on. He's been fighting that fight for a long, long time. I just came today just to present to you the numbers, where they are, give you a little bit more of a solid baseline, because I think a lot of people don't understand where a lot of these dollars go. And they hear $37.5 billion. They figure I have more than enough money for anything. And I wanted you to be able to see right away. I mean, right off the top, $15.5 billion comes right off that 37 that I have like no control over. And then once you go even deeper, we got to spend almost $4.5 billion to keep the lights on and pay the custodians to keep the schools clean and all of those things. That was the point of sharing with you today, so you will understand where I sit as chancellor, and then you recognize where some of these tough decisions start to get made. So I just hope that it was helpful. I thank all of you for listening. We're going to make sure that all of you get this right away, so you'll have it in front of you as well. And if you need any further clarification, don't hesitate to reach out to our offices. We'll get the answers to any questions that you pose. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for presenting today, and especially the visuals really help to see where the money is going, how we're spending the funds. We thank you for the transparency. And as always, it's always a pleasure to have you on our platform. And we're looking forward to speaking to you very soon. Thank you
so much. And I can get out of the way. You got Senator Jackson has been waiting patiently. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So, Chancellor, introduce our next speaker for us from New York State, Senator Robert Jackson, Chair of the Civil Service and Pension Committee. Senator Jackson, you have the floor, and welcome.
Well, thank you. I was going to say good afternoon, but it's still morning and I don't want to waste any time. Quite frankly, we're in Democratic conference talking about our one house budget situations. And now everyone where I should be is in the chambers listening to the votes that are going on. But I know that this is very, very important because all of you are leaders in New York City, in which basically you are in the positions that would shape everything that's happening locally within your districts and citywide. And that's why you had the Chancellor on earlier. And that's why I'm happy to be here also as someone that has been fighting for our children to get the best education they possibly can from way, way back when I first started on the Parents Association in 1980 and now moving forward. So with that, I want to open up to questions that you may have, but let me just give you some background, if I may, and I hope all of you can hear me clearly. From the executive point of view, meaning Kathy Hochul, the proposed budget is a cap or to eliminate the regional cap on the number of charters that may be issued in New York City. All right, that's one thing. And number two, the zombie charters permanently authorize the reissuance of any charter originally issued to a charter school that subsequently closed after July 1st, 2015, due to surrender of your charter, revocation, termination, or non-renewal. And these are all things that are basically I'm giving you that are in the executive budget, okay? And number three, charter schools receive tuition payments made by school districts funded through the state and local sources, in essence, public money. And that includes tuition rates that are established from each school district based on the average annual growth in the district's spending. And consistent with the current statutory formula, the executive budget increases New York City charter schools per pupil funding by 4.5%, okay? So that's basically the proposals put forward by the governor. DOE, now with DOE, we're talking about Department of Education, spending on charter schools. In 2014, the state legislature required DOE to provide public school space or lease private space for all new charter schools and charter expansions in grades levels. Also, 60% of lease costs are covered by the state. The remaining 40% is covered by DOE, okay? Also, a 2021 report by Class Size Matters, we know Lainey Hampson is Class Size Matters, you all know that. If you don't know it, you should know, concluded that DOE overspent on charter rental subsidies while denying co-located public schools legally required matching funds for facility upgrades. And from a historical perspective, you're not aware, if charter schools, let's say we were going to upgrade whatever in their co-located space and it cost $50,000, then $50,000 was supposed to be given to that school for them to utilize also to upgrade whatever they have to grade. So whatever supposedly charters was receiving, that's what schools were supposed to be receiving. But what we're saying is that some schools were denied the co-located public legal requirement matching funds. And continuing on, the existing charter expansion, Article 56, which is charter schools of the education law, under current charter statute, each authorized charter school may apply to revise its charter to allow for grade level expansions beyond the current grade levels of the schools. And what does that mean? I know you all know what that means, but I don't assume that everyone knows. It means, for example, if I opened up a charter school from K to 5, okay, and then if I want to expand, I can open up another school from 6 to 8, intermediate school. And then if in fact I want to open up a third school, I can go from 9 to 12 and not in the same location, anywhere in the city of New York. And that's what's happening overall, okay? So this loophole in education law has allowed for significant growth in charter expansions without the regards for the statutory issuance of the number of permitted charter schools. And so Shelley Mayer, who is a state senator from Yonkers and other parts of Westchester County, she has the bill S-2974 basically to eliminate that. And I am going to be communicating with her on that shortly to try to move that particular bill, okay? So I told you about executive budget, about DOE spending on charters. Now here's the data. As of October 5th, 2022, the State Education Department, SED, recognized 357 charter schools operating across the state. 287 are located in New York City, and 12 of those that are given a license to open up are not open, but have charter authorization. Hello? And so I've asked my staff to research that, okay? So since they already have a license to open and they haven't opened, they're just standing there, let's say standing there. I want to know, when was the license given? Who was it given by? And was it 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 months ago, whatever, so that we know what's what. And that reminds me, you know what that reminds me of? 421A, when we talk about affordable housing and landlord developers, before the law expired, they did whatever they have to do legally to put a stick in the ground to say that this gives me the opportunity to build, even though they haven't done anything to build it yet. And that may work a year, 2 or 3 years down the road. That's basically what it is. And so also the details of the charter schools. The New York City Charter School Center and their website identifies that there are 275 charter schools, 90 in Brooklyn, 94 in the Bronx, 56 in Manhattan, 27 in Queens, 8 on Long Island, but Staten Island. So the New York City charter sector serves more students than New York City's big 4 school districts combined. And that as of 2021, 2021. And you know what? What is the big four? The other big four are Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and Binghamton, right? And of course, the fifth one is New York City. So the big five, that's the big five, what they call the big five. New York, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and Binghamton. All right. So, but now, as I said to you, even though there are 275 charters right now, there are 12, they never even opened yet. And so they're talking about opening up the cap. We have 12 schools that haven't even opened. And as I said to you, anyone that had, based on the laws, put in there when Bloomberg was the mayor and Cuomo was the governor, and what's her name from Success Academy, Eva Moskowitz, they basically had their cell phones and what have you, and they agreed to this. In my opinion, I want to fight for public schools and making sure that the $1.5 billion, if the floodgates were open, when I say floodgates, because if in fact the cap is eliminated, all of those openings are going to flood right into New York City. David Banks said at the joint public hearing, he said that, well, that as the chancellor, whatever is decided based on the law and by the budget, that's what he has to go by. But it's going to cost a lot of money. That's what he said. Mayor Adams, when he came up to the joint public hearings, he was asked about that also. He said, if in fact this occurred, it would cost about $1.5 billion. And we wouldn't have no choice but to fund it. And where's that going to take away from? You guess. You guess where it's going to come from. Okay, it's going to impact all the other schools that we're trying to make sure that they have the funds to make sure that there's a small class size based on the contract for excellence. 20 students in grades 1 to 3, K to 3, to 23 from 4 to 8, and then 25 in high school. That's the type of class sizes that we're looking for, but also to make sure we deal with the mental health issues and after school programs that our children need. And so this is the struggle. And so some people say, well, is that why you're against charter? I don't want this floodgate to come and negatively impact the public school system. And let me just say this, if you've been reading the post and what have you and so forth, I said, yes, my kids went to public school, our local public school, which goes K to 8. And one went to Bronx Science, one went to Humanities High School on 18th Street. The other one, my wife and I, we made a decision in order to send her to private school. And I've never hid that from anyone because I am about being honest and transparent. My fight overall was to make sure that the state of New York do what they have to do to guarantee our children the opportunity to get an adequate education. And that's what my fight campaign for fiscal equity versus the state of New York was about. That's why I walked 150 miles in 2003 and 2016 with AQE, and all of you know AQE is the Alliance for Quality Education. That's why the totality of the money that we received in this lawsuit was $16 billion. 11 billion for major capital to build new schools and make major repairs, and 5.5 billion for hiring teachers and programs like that in our schools. And the struggle continues every single day. And so with that, I'm going to stop. And if in fact you want me to then email this to you, Erin Rose would send you the cheat sheet that I just gave you all of that information. And with that, co-chairs, let me open it up to hopefully be able to answer any questions that any of the leaders may have.
We greatly appreciate it, please. So our lobby day is coming for most of us. So it will help with the cheat sheet and we will share, and so they can share and then share. So
Okay.
The more parent voices we have and make it more easier for them to advocate for, because we just passed the resolution opposing the cap, for lifting the cap, and asking for more accountability and transparency, and not to remove the burden on the DOE budget to pay for charter schools, their rent. So at that notion, I know a lot of people have, I don't see any hands up. Nobody has any hands up for the senator.
You know one thing,
Or any questions?
when I basically say, anybody have any questions, I wait about 5 seconds. If no one says anything, I said, thank you very much. See you later.
Oh,
No, I'm
and
not
the
gonna
hands
do
are
that
going
now.
up right now. Hands are going up right now. So we have 2 so far, and sometimes they will put it in the chat because some people have technical issues. So
Okay. But if they can ask the question,
Adriana,
that would be good.
yes. So I will ask the questions for those who puts it in the chat, but I'm gonna let District 17 Veronica Clark goes first, and then followed by Adriana.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairman. My question to you, well, basically it's not a question, it's a comment. I just want to say thank you so much to bring in the knowledge for us and enlighten us what is happening. And also, you know, I know myself and I know everyone on this call is ready to take that fight, because I saw on the TV where there were parents who were outside, I forgot what building, fighting for them to lift the cap. However, I noticed most of those parents would be the parents from the Caribbean, because we culture in the Caribbean thinking that you send your child to a private school, it's more prestigious than a regular school. And I think this is what is happening with them, and thinking that that charter schools are better than public school, which I'm not going to hit it down, but I'm not a charter school person. So I'm ready to take that fight. If we have to stand outside from 6 to 6, I am one who is willing to take that role. So I want to thank you so much for helping us understand and being there for us. Thank you.
Veronica, you're welcome. And what I'll try to do is to give you as much information as I can, like this cheat sheet that I had that my staff prepared, the stats and any other information in order to give you, I don't like to use the terminology like ammunition. Ammunition would dictate like warfare and what have you. This is not about warfare. This is about making sure that our children get a good education. And I've said loud and clear that every parent has to make a decision based on what their needs are. Okay, and I will not tell someone that wants to send their kids to a charter school, they should not. I am here to fight for public school, but every parent has to make a decision, just like I made a decision with my wife to send our daughter, Sumaya, who's now 36, to the Dwight, which is a public school, a private school on Upper West Side. And I've never, as a public school parent fighting, I've never hit that fight, that information, because I'm not about to lie to anybody about my kids' education. You understand? So everyone has to make a decision. We want to make sure that the schools have everything that they need in order to make sure that our kids get a good education. And that's communicating loud and clear to also the unions and everything that are staffing the schools. And that's why, for example, they have teacher learning centers that are being put in schools so teachers can get the help that they need in order to make sure that they're up to date in everything that they can in order to make sure our kids get a good education. So that's what it's about, constantly refocusing about what we're doing and how we're doing it. That's what it's about. Okay.
Thank you. And District 28, Adriana.
Thank you, Senator Jackson, for being here and for entertaining our questions. A few of us in the space are somewhat knowledgeable about what a zombie charter truly means and the effect that it will truly have on the city and on the communities respectively. We know also that charter enrollment is on the decline, right? So it's very hard to justify lifting the cap. Could you speak more to, just to give an explanation for the people who are watching on YouTube or as a live stream, and to everyone here, could you explain a little bit more about why we specifically need to oppose the zombie charters also being wrapped into this?
Well, I think that from my understanding, and even last year, for example, we had people coming up advocating to release the zombie charters, because basically these were people of color coming up and communicating with us, Black and Latino and Asian people saying, advocating for the release of those. Bottom line is, it's part of a bigger package right now. And in my opinion, that is not going to separate from the main primary issue is eliminating the cap. So it so happens that's how it's wrapped. And I don't think it's going to be unwrapped. Let me just say that. But you know one thing, I'm giving you my opinion. It's not over till it's over. And so, but based on what I know and based on what I'm hearing, it's part of a package, and we're not willing to open up this package in order for that to happen. That's my honest opinion.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other credit, but while people are still formulating questions or comments or thought, I just want to reiterate that this is not about choice. Asking for transparency and accountability on the use of public funds is a right of when you use taxpayer dollars. Asking not to lift up the cap because it will hurt New York City public schools is not attacking choice. We want to make that very clear. We're not attacking choice. And we don't want parents against parents. We want to make sure that, you know, if you're going to use tax dollars, we should be accountable. If you're going to want to co-locate in the New York City public schools, there have to be a greater transparency and accountability on how those funds are being spent as well. And
I wanted to say, I don't mean to interrupt you, that I picked up my local newspaper, weekly newspaper that comes out uptown in Washington Heights. And there were about a whole section on charter schools. And New York City public schools do not have money to spend to advertise. We just don't have the money. I can't give you $25,000 or $50,000 to advertise for your school. But that's what's happening all over. Not only is charters advertising in newspapers, but on television and everything. So where are they getting the money from? From those that want, basically, in my opinion, public schools to become where it follow the student no matter where you go, in essence, to privatize education. I'm not about privatizing education. I'm about making sure that everyone's right under the New York State Constitution, there shall be public schools. That's what the actual Constitution says. And in the lawsuit that we filed back in way back in 1993, that I was a lead plaintiff along with other parents and what have you, basically it says that the state of New York is obligated to educate our children so they can graduate from high school knowing how to read, knowing how to write, knowing how to serve on a jury, and being able to hold competitive employment. That's what is guaranteed from a minimum point of view for our children. And that's what we need to fight for, to make sure that that happens, but even before that, even higher, to get the best education they rightfully can. And that's what I've been fighting for my entire life as a parent. And my wife and I, we have 3 girls, and I tell you who they're 47, 42, and 36. And since they were in elementary school, I've been fighting for them and all of the children, not only in New York City, but New York State. And you know one thing? That's why I look at, well, what are they, you might say, what are your girls doing now? The oldest one is a doctor. The middle one is a math specialist at a school district in Virginia. And the youngest one, who went to the Dwight schools, she went to Juilliard, and she's a company manager for Alvin Ailey too. So those are our 3 girls, and that's what we fight for, to ensure that we give our kids every opportunity so that they can be the type of people that can, one, live and support themselves based on their education, based on their jobs or careers that they have, and also to make them proud of themselves and make us proud that we did a good job in raising them. And so that's what I'm about overall.
thank you so much for clarification. And I don't see any more hands up. Well, this discussion is very important, and thank you for bringing it home, right? We are here, CPAC, Chancellor's Parent Advisor, are elected to represent our families, which are New York City public schools, and that's all we are doing. And we really, really appreciate you taking time to speak with us today about this, and perfect timing with about the budget, and align what the Chancellor talked about too. And it was absolutely wonderful, and thank you so much. We had Senator Lou last month, we have you this month, and hopefully we have Assemblyman Benedetto will join us as well.
Well, let me just say that you're doing a great job. John Liu obviously is the chair of the New York City Education Committee. Shelley Mayer is the chair of the Statewide Education Committee. and Toby Savitsky is the chair of the Higher Education Committee. And Robert Jackson, your fighter, has on all three committees. And believe me, we are there fighting to make sure that our kids get a good education. And so I thank you. And then again, we're going to send you that information, and Aaron Rose will send you additional information to help you be able to answer any questions that you may have. And if you have questions that you haven't gotten answered, then send it to Aaron Rose. I will look at them. She will share before she sends it back to you to make sure everything is okay. All right?
Absolutely. Tell Erin Rose that I said hello and thank you so much. Enjoy the rest. Hi, Erin. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to be sending an email with all this information with some of the bills that are trying to combat this problem. And if you have any questions, feel free to call our office. Feel free to email me. We're open and accessible to you.
And also, you should know, and you probably all know, that my chief of staff, Joanna Garcia, was very actively involved in the same school where my kids went to, where her kids went to, PSIS 187 in Washington Heights. She was the president of the President's Council in District 6 and chair of Community School Board 6, president of the school, not school board, the CEC, and very active overall in ensuring that basically we have advocates in order to make sure that we fight the good fight on behalf of all of the parents in New York City. That was Joanna Garcia, our chief of staff, and I'm very proud of her and her development over the years. She said that I'm her mentor, and overall, I'm proud to say that I try to mentor anyone and everyone to make sure that you have what you need in order to be able to advocate for your children and for your school. So with that, I say thank you very much for having me. I'm going to go back into session and to continue the voting, okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye-bye. So folks, any questions, any concerns you'd like to bring up at this time? I believe we went through all the other updates or business that CPAC has already, but anybody would like to make any final comment before I ask parents to make an adjournment? Francis, District 25.
Hey, Shirley, I just wanted to say thank you, you, Randy, and the rest of the CPAC board. You guys are really leading us and bringing in some great presenters here and speakers. So I wanted to really thank you because I know you're all working hard. So thank you.
We appreciate, thank you. Anything else? District 13, Celia, you have the floor.
Hi, Chair Orban. I had a question. Was there a bylaws meeting or some, or a committee or something?
No, it was an announcement that our next month meeting, we are going to make proposed bylaw amendments.
Okay.
And
all right.
It was just a notification. Instead of sending it 10 days ahead, we send it like over a month ahead to be prepared, and which what proposed amendments changes we're going to do for April's meeting, which is the 20th.
All right. Another question, or is there going to be discussion at that meeting, or is it?
The proposed amendments, you can send an email if you want to do a special meeting to discuss, but those are the proposed amendments, and Randy is going to send the wording before that meeting if you want to have a discussion, because the 20th meeting, we're going to vote on the proposed amendments.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Anything else? All right. So I know you're tired of looking at this pretty face, right? So who would like to, I see Angela, you have your hands up.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. District 8.
Yeah.
And I second it?
Veronica Clark.
All right, District 17, awesome. So the time is now 12:14 p.m. and you got back 16 minutes. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Christina.
Shirley, can you stay on for a second or
Yeah,
no?
yeah,
Okay.
yes, I can. Let me just stop the recording.